Coming to you from the Deep South, this is the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast. High-impact leadership is not reserved for leaders, and it has nothing to do with your position, title, or rank. However, it does have everything to do with your character. It's time to climb to the next level and beyond, personally and professionally. Now, let's start making it happen with your host, Max Story.
Hello, and thanks for listening to the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast today. So today we're on Chapter 4 of Rhea's book, The Ladder of Influence, 5 Steps for Climbing to the Next Level and Beyond. So today, Chapter 4 is the first step, influence based on control of self. But before I dive into this, I want to tell you something new Rhea and I have just released. It's free, so listen up. It's a 2-hour video course with an 8-page downloadable workbook. You get instant access to both of these things. And the topic is the 5 types of leaders. And that's content from my book, Defining Influence. Subtitle is Increasing Your Influence Increases Your Options. But it's a 2-hour video course. People have really liked that content. And I wrote a blog about it for a Association for Talent Development, which has like 140,000 members. I wrote that, I think, in 2017. And they were telling me it was the most viewed blog, article, whatever you want to call it, on their site at that time. May still be, I don't know. But it was for a couple of years because they told me about it. They just were crazy about it. So anyway, it's just a few pages from my Defining Influence book. But Rhea and I took that and turned it into basically a 2-hour video course. And you get the workbook, you got some fill in the blanks, and then at the end, you go all the way through, you'll get an official certificate of completion that you can put on your resume, or you can turn it into HR, let them know you're investing in yourself and that sort of stuff and adding value to yourself. But you go to bluecollarleadership.com/academy, or just go to bluecollarleadership.com, look for the online training courses menu, go down within it, and then look for the Learn More button that's underneath the individuals courses, and you'll see it. You may have to look around in there to find it, but it'll be blue. A blue background says the 5 types of leaders. You just click on that, simply input your information, and we're not going to spam you. You have to put in your address, your phone number, your email. That's because that's part of it's the platform where we do our paid courses. So that's part of it. But you're not going to put in any credit card or anything like that. You just got to fill out the form because that's the way the system works. And we're not going to spam you. We don't do all that spamming. So you just put your information. When you get done, you get instant access to it. There's instructions there to tell you how to get through it. So if you want to invest in yourself, separate yourself from the crowd, and truly learn why people lead the way they do, what it is about their character and their competency that causes them to be one of these types of leaders. And the different types are managerial leader from bottom to top, relational leader, motivational leader, inspirational leader, and transformational leader. So that's enough about that. I just want to make sure you knew it was out there because it's a pretty cool thing, and have some folks go through it already and talk about how much value they got out of it for free. And it is free. There's other paid courses you can go through there if you want to, but you ain't got to. Just go check out that free course and see what it feels like and what it looks like. I used to love to go through those video course trainings when I was really focused on personal growth and development as an individual and as a leader. So let's get here to Chapter 4 of the Ladder of Influence. And Rhea's talking about the first step. Again, that's influence based on control of self. And control of self is the first step. The first step on the ladder of influence is the control of self step. It's just kind of like the foundational subcomponent of character development, which is the second step. But this is the most important part of character development. So I really like how she did that. She separated it out and made control of self its own step. Because till you get control of self, nothing on the other steps is going to matter, because you're not going to be very effective in life. I met a lot of folks who can't control themselves, who end up working on the front lines and entry-level positions, job hopping for their entire life. And that's okay if that's what you want to do. But I've met a whole lot of people that's not what they want to do. And part of the reason for a lot of these folks who do that is they can't control themselves. Lots of different ways, but at the root cause of what's holding them back is control of self is lacking. So Rhea, in this book, Rhea talks about, she says, we all have an inner 2-year-old living inside of us. This inner 2-year-old, you know what I'm talking about. That one that's always moaning, groaning, whining, and you may not literally get on the floor and pound your hands and kick your feet like you might have did when you were 2 years old. So maybe you do. Some adults, I think, still act like that from time to time. But what she's really talking about is that inner 2-year-old that did that is still doing it on the inside. And you're responding based on emotions in the moment generally doesn't serve us well. That's what she says there. Responding based on emotions in the moment generally doesn't serve us well. And she says, Andy Stanley reminds us your feelings can be terrible leaders. And it's key that can be terrible leaders is a key component in there, because your emotions can also be amazing leaders. You got to learn which emotions serve you, which ones launch you, and which ones limit you. Obviously, those strong negative emotions push you in the wrong direction if you allow them to. Again, she's talking about people who are responding based on emotions in a negative way. Doesn't serve us. You get to choose. Nobody can offend you. This one crazy thing I hear people talk about, so-and-so offended me. Ain't nobody offended you. You chose to be offended. If you offended about something, you chose to be offended. You can see two people in the same exact spot who hear the same exact thing. One of them chooses to be offended and one doesn't. And neither of them like what they heard. I hear stuff all the time that offends people standing beside me, and it don't bother me at all. I don't like it, but I ain't giving anybody the rights to offend me. I don't want to be offended, so I choose not to be offended. Nobody can offend you without your permission. You got to know this. It's one of the huge components of control of self. Take responsibility for who you are. Take responsibility for how you act. Take responsibility for how you behave. Take responsibility for what you do and also what you don't do. You're in control of yourself. You can blame as many people as you want for what you do, but there's only one person deciding to do it. It's you. I'm the only person deciding to do what I do. Ain't nobody responsible for what I do. Ain't nobody ever been responsible for what I've done. And believe me, I used to blame people all the time for my behavior. Now, when I think about that, I was an idiot. I was acting like an idiot, and I was living like an idiot because I was an idiot. I ain't talking about you. I'm talking about me. I would never call you an idiot, but I call me one in a heartbeat because I know who I was and what I was. And I was blaming the world. Like Andy Stanley said, your feelings can be terrible leaders, but the feelings I was operating off of were bad leaders. They were terrible leaders. I had to learn how to embrace the good emotions and how to suppress the bad emotions. And not necessarily suppress them, just don't act on them. There's things that bother me today and nobody even knows it. Used to, everybody would know it. If I was in traffic, something bothered me in traffic, everybody around me would know it. Today, nobody has a clue. I had to get control of self, and I needed it big time. Anybody who knew me back in those days, they know it. So Rhea says that the choices we make mentally and physically in response to what happens to us, that's the stimulus, are critical because they will impact our situation positively or negatively, short term and long term. So the key word she's saying there, the choices we make mentally and physically. So you can't make a physical choice without first making a mental choice. If it's a choice. If it's an auto response or something, that's different. I ain't talking about that. But I'm talking about things people choose to do that requires physical movement of their mouth, of their body, where it's going to be, their arms and their legs and their hands, everything. That's all the physical stuff. But when you choose to do any of that, it's a choice. That's why I say you choose to do it. If somebody goes off, gets goofy and silly, and they let the feelings be terrible leaders, and they punch a hole in the wall, That's physical, but they chose to do it. It didn't just happen. They may say it just happened, but it didn't just happen. If it just happens, you'd see people walking around all the time in normal situations and they just be punching holes in the wall. That ain't how it works. Unless you decide to punch a hole in the wall, you ain't gonna punch a hole in the wall. And if you chose to punch a hole in the wall, it ain't got nothing to do with anybody who's standing around you. No matter who they are, what they saying, what they doing, they responsible for all of that. But if you punch a hole in the wall, you responsible for punching a hole in the wall. This is part of control of self. You can do it all you want, but you got to understand you did it because you wanted to, not because somebody else said something or did something. Between stimulus and response, human beings had the freedom to pause and choose their response. I learned that from Dr. Covey, who learned it from Viktor Frankl, who learned it from somebody else. All these principles that we teach and talk about, we try to give credit to people, but it goes all the way back to the beginning of time, all this stuff. These are principles that relate to people. Kind of like trying to give somebody credit for gravity. People discover gravity, but they already knew about it. Who's going to get credit? I usually try to give credit to whoever I heard say something. They might have read it somewhere else and didn't credit that person, or they might have said it and don't even know that 50 other people have done said it, and I didn't hear these other 50 people say it. I heard so-and-so say it, so I try to quote those people. But Dr. Stephen R. Covey, author of The 7 Habits, he was the first person I heard say between stimulus and response, human beings have the freedom to pause and choose their response. Guess what happens when you pause? You're exercising control of self. That little principle I just shared with you that I learned from Dr. Covey, that's the most important principle I ever learned in my life. That's why I know when Rhea wrote this book, she got it right. The first step is control of self. That's what was holding me back in my life the most. And it doesn't have to be bad. When I used to go out partying and all that, I was having a blast. But I wasn't controlling myself very well. That was not serving me very well. I hadn't drank alcohol since 2012, but before 2012, I drank a lot of alcohol. Last drop I had was in 2012. I'm recording this podcast 2025. I probably still got a buzz. That's how much alcohol I drank before 2012. That's a joke, right? Hang in there with me. I'm just saying, I done a lot of alcohol drinking. That was a choice. A lot of it was related to fun, but a lot of times I'd end up getting in a bad situation or angry about something because I was drunk. Wasn't thinking right. Let my emotions control me, and they were drunk emotions on top of that. Choosing to drink alcohol, guess what that is? That's another choice. I used to blame all kind of folks, all kind of things, all kind of situations. That's just one example. I ain't here to beat up on you if you drink alcohol. I don't care if you do or you don't. I ain't telling your story. I'm telling my story, and that's just part of it. But my life got better when I started making better choices around alcohol. Cut it out of my life. That was 2012. 2018, I cut out sodas and Cokes, whatever you want to call it. Down in the South, people call everything a Coke. Somebody says they want a Coke, you gotta know what kind. Up north, if somebody says they want a Coke, they probably want a Coke. But down south, everything seems to be a Coke. You know what I'm talking about. I drank water since 2018. I don't even think I've had any kind of Coke, Diet Coke, Mountain Dew, orange drink, whatever, all these different kind of Dr. Pepper. I don't think I've had one since 2018. I drink water. I drink raw fruit and vegetable juice. Occasionally, real maybe some kind of green tea or something supposed to be healthy. But it's 99% water and raw fruit and vegetable juice, which is something she makes. She'll actually be making them while I'm recording this podcast. Hopefully we won't hear if she gets started in there, but she buys a lot of organic vegetables and fruits and runs these things through the machine and separates the pulp from the juice, and basically you get juice that's like water. Ain't no pulp in it, nothing like that. So anyway, this ain't a lesson about all that. I'm just sharing some things out of my life where I started making better choices. What happened then? I quit having headaches. I used to have headaches all the time. I had Excedrin with me everywhere I went. I stopped drinking these sodas. The headaches went away. Lots of other things happened too, because that's the same time I started drinking the raw fruit and vegetable juices. So stopped drinking sodas, took out the toxic junk out of my system, and started putting in the healthy micronutrients into my system. And amazing what happened when you make a good choice. Good things happen. All right. Rhea says, climbing the ladder of influence isn't about being perfect. You ain't going to get to perfect. You can strive for perfect your whole life. You ain't never going to get there. I ain't never going to get there. I screw up at least 10 times a day, usually before I get dressed. That's how bad life is. If you really want to look in the mirror and say, what did you get wrong? The time you wake up could be wrong. That could be your first choice you make. You get up late. I mean, you ain't even out of bed yet and you done made a bad choice. See how these things work? That bad choice could lead to another bunch of bad choices. Maybe you're late for work. You forget something at the house. And the first thing you got to do without it. But now you're in a rush to get to work. You might get a speeding ticket. You might be in an accident. Either one of those things can cost you a lot of money. You might already been late twice. This is your third strike at work. Now you ain't got a job. You see what I'm talking about? Choices. And all I'm saying is the time you woke up to start your day was the first bad choice in that example. And it's something I've been saying lately, came into my mind one day. I was typing a response on LinkedIn to somebody, and I happened to say this, but it stuck with me because it's some good stuff. And when I'm talking about all these choices, having control of self, like Rhea's talking about here at the first step on the ladder of influence. A lot of times when I'm speaking now, I tell people, it's hard to swallow the truth if you got a mouthful of pride and ego. Don't miss that one right there. There's a lot of people get told the truth by somebody, whether it's somebody they know closely or somebody they know indirectly, whether it's something they hear from somebody they don't know at all, or they read it in a book, or they hear it on a podcast like this, and it's the truth, and they need to hear it, but they just can't get it down because they got a mouthful of pride and ego. Don't let that be you. You want to climb this ladder of influence, you got to develop some humility, some vulnerability, willingness to look in the mirror and say, who am I at the ground level down here? I'm talking about, who are you relative to your emotions? Are you reactive, responding based on your emotions, especially the bad emotions, what I'm talking about, being reactive? Or are you proactive, responding based on values and principles? That's the difference. Reactive people who can't control themselves, they're responding based on emotions, bad emotions, sometimes good emotions. Sometimes good emotions make people do bad stuff. There's a lot of people went out to celebrate. They didn't come home next day because they got killed for some reason. They killed themselves in a car accident, drinking and driving, or they got excited. They got drinking, having a good time at the bar, and got into some mess with somebody, and somebody shot them in the face. I mean, who knows why? I'm just saying, you can make bad choices based on good emotions. So you got to be careful of that too. But what proactive people do is they respond based on time-tested, proven values and principles. So climbing the ladder of influence is about being perfect, but it's about being intentional. It's about accepting responsibility when we make a mistake and learning how to improve in the future. So if you make a mistake, don't look back and beat yourself up. Even now, you may be guilty of that in listening to this episode. You may be thinking about some bad choices you made recently. Don't go back and think about them to beat yourself up. That's a waste of time. 100% waste of time. Go back. You can go back all you want, get the lesson. Go back, think about a mistake, a bad choice you made. But the whole point of doing that is to go mine the lesson, meaning like you mining gold. You're looking for the value in the lesson. Get the lesson, turn around and go the other way. Forget about it. Move on. And improve in the future. Rhea says, when it comes to influencing others, you must realize your choices will make you or break you. I'm going to say that again. You can hit rewind on it, pause, do it a couple times if you need to. This is part of being in control of self, is realizing this right here. When it comes to influencing others, you must realize your choices will make you or break you. In terms of influence, the question isn't whether your choices are right or wrong. The question is this right here. How are those choices impacting my influence? If you want to lead your life well, that's what the whole point is to increase your influence. More influence you have, better your life's going to be. More influence you have, more options you're going to have. More options you have, better your life's going to be. See how this works? So you got to realize, what choices do I have to start making to grow and develop my influence with the right people? Who are the right people? Depends on what you value. We're assuming when we're writing and speaking and teaching, we're talking to people who value being positive, having a positive impact in their own lives, the lives of the people they care about at home, the lives of the people they work with, 360 degrees from wherever you are. How can you live a better life so that you can help other people live a better life? That's what our stuff's about. Rhea shares a quote here from Henry Ward Beecher. He said this: hold yourself responsible for a higher standard than anybody expects of you. Never excuse yourself. And I always got to say, when I talk about excuses, Rhea talks about excuses. I hear other people talking about excuses. And you've heard me say this 100 times, but you got to get this in your brain. And this quote right here comes from Myron Golden. He says, blame is the most popular excuse. When you blaming somebody, you making an excuse. Now, when you hear me say this, the next time you hear somebody casting blame, you probably going to flash back to this. You'd be thinking, look at them jokers making an excuse. They think they're blaming somebody else. Everybody's buying what they're selling, but all they're doing is making an excuse. It's so easy to look out the window and understand the stuff I'm talking about. What's hard is to look in that mirror and understand what I'm talking about. You'll pop off and make an excuse and won't even realize you made an excuse. It'll go right over your head. You're the one that said it. You're the one that made it. Usually when you make an excuse, you're trying to justify some type of behavior that you didn't have, or that you did have but you shouldn't have. That's all we're doing when we're making an excuse, trying to dodge responsibility. So be careful about that. Hold yourself, as Henry Ward Beecher said, hold yourself responsible for a higher standard than anybody expects of you. Never excuse yourself. That's pretty good stuff right there. I hope you found some value in today's episode. If you don't have the Ladder of Influence yet, I hope you go out and buy that audio book, ebook, paperback book. I highly recommend the paperback book. And also take advantage of that course, that free course I was telling you about earlier, and go check it out. You'll kind of see what it looks like and feels like. And that's an intro to our paid courses if you want to take that opportunity. We got a 7.5-hour course on this Ladder of Influence. It's $99. You get a 30-page workbook. You get a certificate of completion when you finish. The number one thing you're going to get is a much higher level of understanding. Had somebody recently just finish this course. I'll give him a shout out because he's probably listening to this podcast, Mr. Jim McEwen up in St. Peters, Missouri. And he told me he's unread Rhea's book 3 times. And then he went, he's a frontline entry-level guy working in the recycle department for the city of St. Peters. He's read tons of our books. He's led tons of book studies. He went through this course I'm talking about right here on the Ladder of Influence. He's just finished it recently. And he's done read the book 3 times. And he sent us a message. He couldn't believe how much he got out of the course after reading the book 3 times. He says it just brings it to life. You can read the book in 2-3 hours. But we got nearly 8 hours of us talking and telling stories, teaching content around this book. You may want to check that out. And Jim's done went through the Blue Collar Leadership, Leading from the Front Lines. And just today, as I'm recording this, he just finished Blue Collar Leadership and Teamwork, 30 Traits of High Impact Players. Just over the last few weeks, he's done invested $300 basically of his own money developing himself through these courses. His life's getting better. His team's getting better. He's been leading book studies for over 2 years. And nobody reports to him. Most leaders I know are not leading at the level Jim leads at, no matter what level they're at. No matter if they're the top leader or the middle management or frontline management, leadership, doesn't make any difference. If you want to see who Jim is and feel what I'm talking about, this man, you go check out the YouTube channel, Blue Collar Leadership YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/@Blue Collar Leadership. Look for the playlist. Real people getting real results. I got an interview with Jim on there, number 11. You want to get fired up by a frontline leader, meaning he's an entry-level position, but he's a high-impact leader of people. You go check out Mr. Jim. Let him fire you up. I know I've probably shared about him several times, and I'm going to keep sharing about him because he is a phenomenal example of a high-impact leader, leading right where he is. He'll motivate you. He'll inspire you. Go check him out. Talk to you next time.
Make it happen or someone else will. It might as well be you. Are you serious about taking your career and your life to the next level and beyond? Check out Mac Story's Blue Collar Leadership series books and others, now available on audio, along with paperback and ebooks at Amazon and Audible. Please visit bluecollarleadership.com to learn about Mac's books, programs, special offers, and more. Thank you for listening to the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast.